Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the Robotics Enterprise Framework series with UiPath. In case you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest updates. Prior to this video, we have already covered the basics of RE framework. We have created some of the use cases, some with using the queues, some without the queues. We have seen how we can customize the RE framework in a linear process, and also we have seen the various kind of challenges which we might face while using RE framework and their solution, such as how do you read 100 items from the queue? How do you read the data from the queue? What happens if I get an exception here? How do I use a config in a sequence and other things, right? So in case if you're not aware of any of this, you can always follow this playlist. I have posted the link of this playlist in the description. Also, in case you are more comfortable in Hindi, this same playlist on basics of RE framework and a project is covered in Hindi language as well. You would also find the link in the description. Today, I am going to talk about bulk uploading queue item using a CSV file. And if I talk about the agenda, this would be our agenda. We are going to see what exactly is this thing. Why do I even require it? What exactly is call mapping? Upload strategy, what is dynamic typing, and all of this we are going to do with a step-by-step demo, right? You always can follow along with me so that you also understand these concepts, right? So let's get started by having the first thing, that what exactly is this thing, right? As per UiPath, it says that this feature enable you to bulk upload the queue item into the queue using a CSV file. But before that, we need to understand why I should actually upload the items into the queue. So those of you who are new to transactional processing, whenever in RE framework I am doing the transactional processing, we upload all the data to a queue. Now the purpose of adding the data to the queue is that multiple robots can use the same queue and process the items independently, and that too as a separate transactions. So that is why we have to add all the transaction item to the queue. Now when it comes to adding of data to the queue, we have two mechanisms. One mechanism is that we can always write an dispatcher, which is a robot which actually add the data to the queue. And then we have a performer which actually goes and read the data from the queue and does all the processing, right? So dispatcher, performer we have already covered. Now when we talk specifically about dispatcher, there also I have two approaches. The first approach is I can actually load all the items one by one, or the second thing is we always can use an activity which is called bulk add queue item, which simply means that you can actually add the complete data table to the queues. So if I have an Excel which is having, let's say, 100 items and I do not want to add them one by one, I can simply use that activity and I was able to add all of that in the queues, right? That also we have seen in the some of the use cases. But this approach is a bit different, where we are saying that you do not have to necessarily have a dispatcher process. You always can add the data to the queue directly with the help of a CSV file, right? When I say CSV, it's a comma separated file and the output is always a data table. That is why it is called bulk upload of queue items. So how does this thing actually work? So first of all, you have a data which is placed in an Excel, or I would say in a CSV file, that has to be put into a specified queue. In that file, you have predefined columns, predefined headers, which are built as per what the orchestrator queue require. You just have to put your information, keep it in a location and instruct UiPath orchestrator to load the queue. And that's it, right? Without running the robot for the dispatcher, you actually can go and load the data into the orchestrator queues, right? So I hope what exactly is this feature you understand. You can go through these slides, right? And you can just read this thing. But the idea is simple. I want to load data into the queue. I want to load it using a bulk, which means that I don't want to add one by one. I have a CSV file and I simply want to add all that data to the queue for transactional processing, right? So in case I have this requirement, I'm going to use this feature of the orchestrator. Okay, so now let's go to Orchestrator and see how and where I can actually add this information. So in the Orchestrator, what we are going to do is, for the sake of clarity, we are going to create a new queue, and then we are trying to add a data to the queue with the help of CSV file. Okay, so you guys can follow along with me. So I am now going to my Orchestrator. Okay, so this is my cloud.uipath.com orchestrator, which is my community orchestrator, right? I have created certain folder here. I'll go to this one, which says the admin folder. I'll click on it. Then I'll go to this guy, which says queues, right? Because we want to add data to the queue, right? As you can see, I have multiple different queues which are available here, right? So I do not want to touch them. So I'll go here and I'll create a new queue. So this is how you create a new queue in Orchestrator, right? So you go to the queue. On the right top, you have this button which says add queue. Click on that, create a new queue, right? Add the queue name. So I would say that this is my sample queue. Okay, good practice, always give the description. So I would say that this is a sample queue to test bulk CSV upload. Okay, I'll just correct the spelling. The queue is asking you how many times you want to retry, right? This is for the system exception. If you want to retry, you can just mark it, otherwise you can just ignore it, right? Do you want to enforce unique reference? As of now, I don't have this, so I'll just keep this everything to the default setting and I'll hit add, right? I'll just copy this name of the queue, sample queue, and I'll say add. And here, as you can see, my sample queue is created, which has everything 0, right? Because we have not done anything, we just created the queue. I can go here and I say view the transactions, and as you can see that I do not have any transactions which are available in the queue, right? So all I can do is I can go back to the queues. I'll again go here, sample queue, which is absolutely blank, right? In this 3 dots, more actions, if you see, you have something which is called upload the items, right? Now to run a process on top of this queue, we need items. In a regular way, we are going to use the dispatcher, right? Dispatcher will load the queue, but I have this guy here which says upload the items, right? If I click on upload items, it opens a pop-up for me and it is asking me some of the things, right? It is asking me, give me the CSV file. Then there are 2 options. Then it is asking me for a dynamic typing, right? What exactly is a dynamic typing, right? So before I go and upload and do all those things, I need to first understand what is the format of the CSV file. What exactly is this thing, right? So we need to understand the basics, right? Because if we don't understand all of these functionalities and the feature, we might process the wrong data, right? Now to understand all of these things, we have to first understand that what exactly is the CSV file, right? What format of data should I put in the CSV file and where can I get this, right? So whenever we have to upload any sample CSV to this orchestrator, UiPath has provided me this sheet, which is nothing but an plain template, right? It has got this header, which is reference, deadline, postpone, priority, custom 1, custom 2, right? Many of you might be thinking that, Mukesh, where I would get this, right? Don't worry, I'll tell you step by step how you can get it, right? So it's very easy, right? So the thing we need to understand here is that I am being provided with a blank CSV file which has these columns: reference, deadline, postpone, priority, right? And these columns are specific to transactions, right? Whenever I make any queue transaction, queue items, these are the things I require. After that, you have something which is called custom. Now these custom fields are the field which you as a developer want to add to the transaction, right? Because what would I do with this? I need to add my data, right? My processing data, first name, last name, service ticket number, anything, whichever you want to add will go here, right? So this says custom 1, custom 2 and custom 3, and you can add more, right? So this is a template which is provided by Robotics Enterprise Framework for me. Okay, now when it comes to adding of the data, what data should I put here? Now when it comes to adding of the data, I need to be very sure that I provide this data in correct format. Now how can I do that? For that, I'll again go back to my presentation and let's quickly see what data these guys require. Okay, so we have something which is called reference, deadline, postpone, priority, and all these things, right? So reference is mandatory for unique reference queue. Whenever we are creating a queue, remember we talked about this in the RE framework as well, right? If you mark that queue as a unique reference, which means that you cannot put duplicate items in the queue. If your queue do not have the unique reference, you can ignore this. But if your queue has a unique reference, you need to make sure that this is mandatory. It support all the characters except double quotes and this guys, right? So all these except double quotes, which is this one, right? It can accept all the special characters as well, right? But a good practice, we should not include special characters, but if you have a requirement, you can always do that, but it won't expect the double quotes. Okay, so reference, I hope now you understand what exactly is this thing. When we talk about deadline and the postpone, these are the two properties of the queue items, and the format is this, right? You can put any of this format. So let's say I have a requirement where I want to postpone my queue items to this date, this time. I can use this thing. If I only have to postpone it to a particular date and I do not want to consider time, I can only use the date formats, right? This same setting applies to the deadlines and the postpone as well. It's exactly the same, right? So reference, deadline, postpone, you have this format. Now, whenever we add items to the queue, we have something which is called priority, right? Usually a queue items has 3 priority: low, normal, and high, and the numbers are 1, 2, and 3, right? As we can see, priority high, priority normal, and priority low, right? If you do not specify any priority, right? If I say that, okay, I don't have any priority, the items are uploaded with high priority by default, right? So this is the thing you need to remember, guys, that whenever we are adding a bulk add and you do not specify any priority, all the items would be uploaded by a high priority by default. Okay, now the last 3 fields in the Excel were something which is called custom name, right? Which I can do in the custom name. I can put a first name, last name, and all those things, right? The name can only be alphanumeric 0 to 9, A to Z, or underscore. In the custom columns, you cannot have special characters, right? So these are the things you need to remember whenever you are populating that CSV, right? Reference, deadline, postpone, priority, and the custom names. Okay. The last, there is a note which UiPath says that the predefined column headers are case sensitive. Make sure to follow the mapping rules, right? It is case sensitive. So your capital A and small a are different. Okay. Now, a column in your CSV named reference is mapped to the specific data instead of reference column, right? The same thing. So reference and reference is different, right? So capital R reference is something which is mandatory as a unique reference for the queue. Otherwise, if you put a reference, that would be treated as something different, right? So make sure you properly give a proper names as per your requirement. Okay, so I hope you understand this column mapping, that what is the thing which is required where. And now let's go back to the Excel again. Okay, so I'll go back to the Excel now. So this was the Excel. Do I have a unique reference? I created the unique reference as no. So I do not need to fulfill this. I can leave it as blank, right? Deadline, priority is deadline, and postpone is all depending on your requirement, right? So if you want to put a date time here, you can simply use this format YYDD and you can put the deadline, postpone, right? I'll leave all of these thing to default, right? I am leaving the priority also, guys, to the default, which means that all my items are going to be high priority, right? Now let's say for my queue, I want to add a simple data, right? I will just add here first name. Okay, so this is the data, guys, I want to use. Last name, and maybe some kind of extra information which I require for the process, right? Maybe an age. Okay, so this now depends on your requirement. Let's say I'm writing an automation where I have to get the first name, last name, and evaluate age. This thing works for me, right? Remember when we are creating the HR offer letter, we have added the first name, last name, candidate email ID, I think HR email ID also we have added, right? So now all those things will come here, right? So this totally will depend on your requirement, right? So you can keep adding here, and the next thing is you just add the data, right? So I'll just add some data here. Okay, so I have added some sample records, as you can see: Mukesh, Iron Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, and all those characters, right? So you can keep adding your data, but I hope the concept is clear, right? You have to add your custom data in these fields, right? Once you are done using and adding this custom data, all you have to do is just go and save this file. So I'll go here and I'll say save. This is saved, right? Now reference, deadline, priority, I'm leaving blank, but as per your requirement, you are free to populate these fields as well. Okay, I'll just go and close this file, and this is stored at my d-temp file. So this is the file which I have stored, right? Okay, so that was about the column mapping and putting this data into a CSV file. Now our CSV file is ready, right? What are the next thing which we need to take care of? Remember, when I was doing it in the Orchestrator, I was getting a lot of things, right? So there are two strategies whenever you are doing the upload. The first strategy is called the process all item independently, and the second strategy is called all or nothing. Now what does it mean? As the name suggests, process all item independently simply means process all the items individually and add it to the queue. If successful, if not, it returns a list of whose processing failed. You have the option to download the list into a CSV file populated with the same field as in the initial uploaded file. Now what does it mean? For example, I have got 10 items in an Excel, right? Now depending on a requirement, sometime what might happen that out of the 10 items, 2 items are faulted, right? It may be faulty. You have some added special character, they are blank, they are not satisfying the criteria. Now, do you want to add the other 8, or do you want to, cancel all of this? So it's all or nothing, all process independently. If I process all independently, what would happen? Only 8 items would be added to the queue, and for the remaining 2 items, wherever it got failed, I will simply get an exception and I can see that in the CSV file. The other option is called all or nothing, which simply means that either you add all of them or none of them are added. So that's again depend on your requirement, right? So that is why it is important for us to understand which button I should select. Okay, so that was about upload strategy. There was one more option which we saw in the queue, which was called dynamic typing, right? Now what exactly is dynamic typing? Whenever you are uploading the data to the queue, sometime you might need Orchestrator to interpret the string characters as integer or boolean in order to match the schema definition, right? So let's take an example. Okay, in my spreadsheet I have mentioned 23, but I have mentioned it as a string. Now when I am adding it to the queue, I want Orchestrator to treat it as a number to match some of the schema definition. This is the place where dynamic typing is available. It is an option that allows you to control how Orchestrator parses the string into the CSV file when you are uploading the queue items. If you want that option, you can simply say that yes, I want that option. If you do not want it, just uncheck it. Okay, now there is a note which is mentioned: numeric data must confirm the definition of decimal literal. Numeric values greater than 2 to the power of 53 or less than minus 2 to the power of 53 are not converted to the integer to preserve the precision. Make sure to use the dot as the decimal separator and the comma as the thousand separator, right? So I hope the people so I hope this thing makes sense, right? Because whenever we are adding the numbers, I need to separate it by comma, right? So don't put dot, don't put spaces. So you need to follow some standard protocols if you want to have the dynamic typing enabled, right? Because Orchestrator needs to convert it to proper format, right? So as a developer, you need to understand that you have 2 settings which are available. The first one is the upload strategy, where you simply can process all the items, or you can say that all or nothing. And the next one is dynamic typing, which simply where you want to interpret a string characters into some different format, right? Boolean, integer, anything you can do. Okay. Now that you have understand all of this, let's go back to the orchestrator and try to upload the CSV we created. Okay, I'll go back to the orchestrator now. This is our queue. We do not have any items here, right? I'll simply go to this three dots, click on this guy which says upload the items. Okay, select or drop the CSV file, right? My CSV file is located in the D temp files and this was our CSV. So I'll go here, click on this guy which says browse, and I'll go to the D temp files. This is my CSV, right? And I say open. Once this is done, process all item independently or all or nothing, right? Which you want to do. I want to say that all or nothing, right? Now you can see that example one CSV has been parsed successfully and you have 4 rows which are found. Do we want to have the dynamic typing? Yes or no? You can just select this checkbox and decide. In the I button you would have that thing. That is just as simple selecting yes or no, right? So this settings depend on your requirement and this can change the course of your automations, guys, right? So you need to make sure that which option you are selecting. Okay, so I'll select all or nothing and I do not want the dynamic typing, and I simply click on this guy which says upload. And as you can see that it is saying me that I have successfully added 4 queue items, because in my Excel, or I would say in my CSV, right, in my spreadsheet, I'll just open this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 Mukesh, Iron Man, Superman and Wonder Woman, right? Let's go to the queues and I'll go here and I say view the transactions. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the 4 items in the queues are now added to the orchestrator. I'll go to the first one and I say view the details. Wonder Woman and age, first name, last name and age. This is the header which we have put, right? I'll quickly validate one more. Iron Man, age 20, right? So now this thing is added to the queue and I have not used any dispatcher, right? I simply use the CSV file. So this is how this functionality works and these are the things you need to remember. Okay, now all of you have a question, right? Where I would get this Excel, this CSV, this format, right? So for that, all you have to do is just go to docs.uipath.com, which is this guy, UiPath documentation. I would directly post this link in the description, right? Most of these things I have already covered in my presentation, so you can always go through it, right? So at the bottom, if you come down, you would have a section which is an example section, right? You can directly come here and select this guy which says example, and here you would have a CSV which is a hyperlink. You simply have to click on this guy and you would notice that example CSV is downloaded. That is nothing but this same blank Excel which I was showing to you initially, right? So again repeating, you just have to go to docs.uipath.com, come here and you have to download it from the example sections. Okay, now if I go back to this document at the top, there are something which you need to note and they are highlighted here. The upload is limited to 15,000 items per file. It's not like that I can add 20,000, 30,000 at a time. Per file, we can only upload 15,000 items, right? So this is the things, guys, you need to remember that 15,000 items we can upload by default. You can also lower this limit as well. In case I am the admin of an orchestrator and I want to lower this, I don't want the people to upload, let's say 100 items. You can always go to this settings which is upload queue max items of the items. This is nothing but the app setting of the orchestrator. If I click on this link, it will go to the actual page and it will guide you how you can do that, right? So that is an app setting mostly related to the orchestrator, but the thing that you need to remember is that the upload is limited to 15,000 file. You have an option to lower that limit as well. Okay, about the column mapping, I think references, everything we have talked, references, deadline, postpone, priority and everything we have talked. Regarding the references are not compatible with a version of 2016.2 or the lower version of the orchestrator. So if you are using orchestrator which is older than 2016.2, references might not work for you. Okay, so these are the things you need to remember whenever you are using any functionality. So that is what I always tell, always read the documentation first. Once you are clear, you are good to go, right? Once we are adding, so this we have already explained, the predefined columns are case sensitive, which means that capital A and small a are different, right? So make sure that you name the columns properly. Upload strategy, dynamic typing, we have also seen. This point I have also explained that if I am doing a dynamic typing, what are the things that I need to take care of, right? And then you have uploading items to the CSV file. You go here in the orchestrator, select the file and do this, right? Now you might have more questions about this thing, that what happens if I leave it unselected, what happens this, what happens that, right? All of these things is explained very well in this documentation, right? The link to the documentation is available in the description as well. And lastly, we have an example which will give you that CSV file, everything available. You can just use this and you can just try it yourself as well. Okay, so that is pretty much I wanted to cover, guys. Let's come back to the points, some points which we need to remember. The upload limit of 15,000, how I can lower the limit, right? Also, please note that you cannot have an empty column headers in your file, right? So if you are trying to add an additional columns, you need to make sure that the header is not empty. Okay, header is required. Predefined are case sensitive, we have seen that, right? So these are the things you need to quickly remember whenever you are adding these things. Okay, let's quickly summarize. So today what we have seen is, we have seen a feature which enables you to upload the queue items to the queue using a CSV file. There is a predefined template which we can download from docs.uipath.com, which is a CSV file. We put the data, we put our custom headers and we simply upload it to the queue. The upload limit is 15,000. We can always lower the limit. The headers should not be blank. The headers are case sensitive, so we need to follow the proper mapping rules. Also, we have some settings which are available in the orchestrator, dynamic typing and the upload strategies, right? I hope this was helpful. If this is the case, let me know in the comments. And that is what I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to let me know in the comments. I would appreciate your feedback on the video as well, that how do you like this video and what are your thoughts. Having said that, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.